Welcome to the All for Literacy podcast, hosted by Dr. Liz Brooke, welcoming established and emerging voices in literacy education and the science of reading. Explore with us the connections between literacy research, educators' knowledge and skills, and the implementation into classroom instruction.
We're celebrating, recognizing, and encouraging excellence.
You just heard David Wyatt, attorney, advisor, entrepreneur, and South Carolina community leader. Today, David joins Dr. Liz Brooke in a conversation about the role of local communities in supporting schools, students, and educators to foster educational equity and growth. Here's your host, Dr. Liz Brooke.
We want to thank you for everything you do for the students, for the parents, for each other. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We're so excited that you're here for this live podcast. I think we're going to have a great conversation tonight. I'm super excited today to be joined by David Wyatt.
Thank you.
David is a seasoned attorney, advisor, entrepreneur, and community leader with nearly 30 years experience. He's based in Greenville, South Carolina. Anybody here from South Carolina? He's dedicated to empowering youth through his work with the South Carolina Football Hall of Fame and their South Carolina Top 10 by 2030 initiative. So help me welcome David Wyatt.
Honored to be here. Thank you, Doc.
Yeah, thank you. So over the last 2 years doing the All for Literacy podcast, we often start by how people got into the field of education. And I often draw on my own experience as a former first grade teacher. But what I'm now more open about is that I didn't know what I needed to know to teach reading as a first grade teacher. How many of you in the room have a similar story, right? And whether it was not through your undergrad or you didn't have access to programs, amazing programs like Letters, right? But today, we're going to connect the sports world with education. And what I don't often get to talk about is that I've been an athlete my whole life growing up. I played sports in college. Well, I was on the team. I didn't play all that often, but it's really, really my two passions coming together. So, David, I want to ask you to tell us a little bit about your story and your experience and how you are taking your love of sports and your experience with sports and connecting it to education.
Great. Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to be here with you, and I heard you could handle the rock at Tufts, so appreciate that humility, but we know that a point guard is the captain of the team. It's exciting for me to be here with educators because I was growing up in Greenville, South Carolina. There was a lot of athletes and entertainers, and I was around a lot of great coaches, which were mentors of mine, and talked a lot about success and winning, but teamwork and all those great things. And one of my classmates talked me into pole vaulting, and I went out and started pole vaulting, and after a couple of years, I ended up having a really bad accident, tore up my knee, woke up with 5 stainless steel staples in my knee, and the doctor telling me I would never walk without a cane again, and he left the room. I'm still processing what he told me, and another guy walks in the room, and he said, "Hey, I heard what happened to you, and I was in the hospital, and I wanted to come encourage you. I was an Olympic runner. I was in qualifying and slipped on the track, hurt my knee, broke my kneecap, and I had to learn to rechannel all that energy, and so you're going to have to rechannel your energy." And my track coach was also a musician. He played in the weekends, and so I started helping him with his class. He was a special ed teacher at J.L. Mann High School in Greenville, and so I would help him with his students, and he'd give me a guitar lesson. And I got to Clemson undergrad, played in a band there, was a Clemson cheerleader, and ended up getting in some litigation. I got sued for a wreck I was in high school, and so the second time we tried that case, I was coming back to band practice at Clemson, and I told one of my band members, I want to be a I want to be go to law school. And he said, well, you should be an entertainment lawyer. Anyway, so that's sort of, I'd never heard of that. And so I started pursuing it. My uncle, I asked him, he was a lawyer. I said, tell me about that, Unc. And he was like, yeah, you don't want to do that. A lot of fast partying, fast women, and all that stuff. And I was like, what? Check. And anyway, when I got out of law school, I worked for a really good litigation and business firm, and I told them I wanted to be an entertainment and sports lawyer, and they laughed, died laughing. But they were very supportive of that desire, and I pursued it, ended up representing some talent, ended up one of my clients invited me to join his firm, and we started an entertainment and sports business that, the athletes love the musicians love the athletes, and we represented the players in the NFL. We had records on the radio, and what I started becoming was the go-to for any athlete that was in trouble or entertainer. They came to me, and what I've begun to realize is that there was a really big disconnect in South Carolina with how our students were being prepared. And so I ended up starting the South Carolina Football Hall of Fame, because if you think about it, in South Carolina, that's one of the things that we're really good at. We're great at football, and something we can be proud of, and it also has influence when it comes to the community. And so we wanted to make a difference through football. So we started the South Carolina Football Hall of Fame with that in mind, and then really realized that South Carolina was in a bad situation when it came to being ready for college and career. And so that's really what got us on to the education track, if you will.
So you were an athlete, you were a lawyer, you were a musician, and all of those kept coming back to how you performed, right? Once you were finished your athletic career, or if you got hurt, right, you always had something else to fall back on because of education. Right? And so making sure that our kids could make those connections as well. And you said somebody you were talking to about this situation in South Carolina and wanting the students to be better prepared said you need to reach out to the Department of Education.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about that connection and how that came about?
Yeah, so, the Football Hall of Fame, we were, of course, looked at probably like many of you. Football Hall of Fame, what does that have to do with education? LaVon Kirkland, who, if you're any Pittsburgh Steelers fans in the room? All right, some Steelers. Okay, so LaVon was from Lamar, South Carolina. Lamar, South Carolina has produced some incredible athletes and a lot of NFLers, and LaVon was one of the first ones. And his parents were educators and great role models for him, and he joined up with us. He was in our Football Hall of Fame and really had a passion for making a difference into the young folks. Mentorship obviously being big, and he's the one that came to us and said, Wyatt, South Carolina's 43rd in the country in college and career readiness. Our kids are getting left behind. Somebody needs to do something about this. I'm LaVon Kirkland. I've never been satisfied with being in the bottom 10 in anything. And I said, okay, LaVon. He said, we should be in the top 10. Top 10? Yeah, David, top 10, college and career readiness. How are you going to do it, LaVon? He said, we're going to educate, encourage, and empower excellence in ourselves first and then in everybody else. And so, we went to one of the legislatures in our area, Jason Elliott, and I told Jason, look, we want to help lead South Carolina to the top 10 in college and career readiness by December 31st, 2030, because, LaVon says that a goal without a deadline is just a wish. And so, Jason looks at me and just, obviously it's a very high goal. It would take a lot of effort and will take a lot of effort. But, at the end of the day, he said, well, why not shoot for the stars? And, we only have about 1 million students in South Carolina. So if we all get together and we put our heads together, maybe we can get to the top 10. And hey, it's not going to hurt to try. If we don't quite get there, but he said, have you started to talk to the State Department? And I said, what State Department? He said, the Department of College and Career Readiness, of course. I didn't know we had one. So I went and met with them. They were awesome. Got the Commission on Higher Education involved, got us to the new Superintendent of Education, Ellen Weaver, And we really tried to take what we were doing, and we want to be a force multiplier. We're not trying to bring something new to the classroom. We're trying to help, you, the academics, the educators, with what you're doing, and use football, which has the ability to sort of cut through the noise and get people's attentions. And it also represents in South Carolina the community. You have people from all socioeconomic backgrounds, all makeups. It's one of the best diversity programs in South Carolina for certain. And so, that's when I really learned about the struggles in our communities with reading and math, and some of the soft skills that we're getting. And I didn't realize, and have really gotten a lot of benefit out of the Lexia education and the podcast that you guys have put forth, learning all about the orthographic mapping and all of that. But, when you get to, by the time you get to third or fifth grade, I mean, you learn to read, and then you read to learn. And so, it's been my honor, like I said, to be here tonight. It's exciting. We can actually, just like when you and I started talking, there's a lot of commonalities. And the education today, there's a lot of these great athletes that are going to these Power 5 schools that have great grades. They don't look like the athletes when I was growing up. And so it's, these kids are, some of them are getting it, some of them are making it. And so what we're trying to do is it's a role model program. Instead of giving people attention when they're messing up, we're giving them attention for doing good. And so
can you tell us a little bit about one of the programs you talked about, right? Because, when we're growing up, sometimes it's not very cool to have good grades, right? It's cool to be the high school quarterback, right? But talk about your high school Heisman program that's not just focused on their, the star quarterback, but what the other characteristics and traits that you're trying to highlight and elevate these students with.
When we were growing up, having good grades wasn't cool. What we're trying to do is make it cool today. And if you're being recruited and you're trying to get a scholarship and you're out here competing for one of these major schools, you got to have good grades. And so we have the high school Heisman. We call it the Bridge Builder Excellence Award Program. And we have two facets to that. One is the Bridge Builder Excellence Award, which is this high school Heisman. And that's based on a rubric that we got from the State Department to grade these kids. But these kids get nominated. There are 300 schools in South Carolina that play football. And so kids on any of those schools can be nominated by any of these administrators, teachers, coaches, nonprofits. And it's really a design to highlight the whole student. And so it's 40% being a great football player. I don't know if y'all know who Coach Willie Jeffries is, but he's a great academic, and he was a great coach, and he's a legend in the state of South Carolina, and has been very instrumental in this program. And Coach Jeffries and I oftentimes argue, because he's like, Wyatt, that education, that grades, that's your 40%, right? And I'm like, no, Coach, it's a football award, so it's 40%, but it's 30% education, 3.2 core GPA. This isn't your shop class. It's your core GPA. You have to have at least a 3.2, and then it's you have to have good character, which is shown through giving back, working with a nonprofit in the community, which really has been fun to bring the nonprofits in and have these guys get some credit for giving back to the nonprofits and making a difference in their communities. And so every one of these nominees are winners. That's really what we're focusing on. It's a role model program. It's not important whether you're in the top 10 or you win this. That's obviously great. But the fact that you've been nominated, that in and of itself is, incredible. You're a winner. You're doing it right. We really, we say we're celebrating, recognizing, and encouraging excellence. So.
I love that. It's not just their athletic ability, but their grades and then their character. I was saying earlier that growing up as an athlete, it teaches you so many of those important life lessons beyond the skills, right? The idea that building leadership skills, teamwork skills, perseverance, right? If you're on a team that's not having a great season. So it's important to recognize those skills as well. And when you're connecting mentors, the teachers, to the students, Do you work with individual schools, or how do you identify those mentors who are then going to reach out to these students in the classrooms?
Yeah, that's a great question. In Greenville, there's a group called the Greenville Mentoring Collaborative, which Alicia Brewster is the head of that organization, and it really has done a good job of working with all of the mentoring areas in our school district. We're also partnering with Greenville County School District is the largest school district in the state of South Carolina, and I think has about 75,000. Well, that's, I think, elementary kids, school kids, age kids there, but it's the 44th, I think, largest school district in the country. And then some of the corporate partners out there, there's a group called ScanSource, which is a great company. And so trying to, and there's really an effort there not to reinvent the wheel, to try to work together, to collaborate. And so we're working in the upstate through that program, and we're, getting some of these football players that want to do something, they come out and help attract others. A lot of times, getting strong male role models is a challenge, and we've been pretty successful in helping, bring some attention. Once people get into it, it's a lot of fun and rewarding, but sometimes it's just the impetus. And so, hey, you might go see Levon Kirkland, or Sam Weich, when he was alive, was very supportive of what we were doing. And so in the upstate, we're doing it like that, and there's some groups in the low country that have some efforts that we're connecting with as well. Like you pointed out, there's a lot of us that are athletes, and the leadership is common, whether you're in the classroom, you're leading your family, or you're out there leading on a team. There's so much commonality there. I think so much rich examples for us to learn from. And I think when I was growing up playing football, I did not realize, the awesome training that I was getting, the coaches that really poured into my life. And when I was looking back on it, I was like, without football, man, I don't even know if I would be alive today. It just had so much of an impact on my life.
Absolutely. And so as we're thinking for folks who are not from South Carolina and maybe thinking about what is the best way that a school, whether it's a teacher, a principal, a district superintendent, what is the best way to make the connection with organizations like yours in the community? Because, funding is always challenging in the schools. And so connecting, whether it's through grants, or can you talk a little bit about that? How would you share with our audience, both here live and listening online, what's that first step as a principal, teacher, or district soup for how do you connect with community organizations?
It's a great question, and I could go a lot of different directions on that. And I think that one of the keys to our success is that if you are an organization that has an ability to bring in an athlete, a young person, whether it's a young lady or a young man, to bring them into your organization. And there's so many great nonprofits out there. There's so much diversity in, I think, the leaders and the kids today. So I think if you can embrace a coach, I would probably reach out to a coach or a child that you might could get involved with what you're doing. And especially some of these higher profile young people, they can learn a lot from you, and I see that a lot of the young folks appreciate what you can, as a nonprofit or an administrator, teach them about the work that you're doing, organizing your day, scheduling your weeks, managing your teams, or working together. And I think a lot of times when you talk about the need and you talk about what you're hoping to accomplish, just speaking out that vision really is a way to attract the resources that you need. So if you had a specific question, I could be more specific, but that's in general.
I think the biggest thing, and the pandemic helped, one of the brighter sides of the pandemic was that I think it raised the awareness of the literacy crisis in this country, and then sold a story coming out and hearing about it, the fact that you're mentioning orthographic mapping, and it's amazing. But I think helping community leaders like yourself and organizations understand, like you said, okay, South Carolina is 43rd. Like, how do we change that, right? And that's why I love the idea of the high school Heisman is really important, but we also talked about getting at those elementary students. And again, going back to my own experience, I didn't have the knowledge I needed to reach all those readers. So supporting a program at the state level is amazing that South Carolina is doing that, using letters to help train teachers. How many of you here have been through letters or are currently going through letters? Yeah, it's amazing. And you're thinking to yourself, why did I not know this sooner, right? And so organizations like yours can really help. I think earlier you mentioned one of your programs is called Bridge Builder, or something about creating that bridge.
Right.
And taking something that is so popular, especially in the South, of football. And I grew up, any Patriots fans here? Woohoo!
There you go.
Not this year, maybe, but but so I grew up in New England my whole life. But then I did go down and I got my doctorate at Florida State. Any Knowles in the room? Again, also not a great year for Florida State football, but the idea of taking these two huge interests, right, of football and literacy. I remember when I was getting my doctorate at Florida State, and one of the things we had to do was teach a course. And I was getting my doctorate in communication sciences and disorders as a speech pathologist. I had one of the football players in my classroom, and I could see he was struggling with the content. And so because I love football, I actually took the content and I turned it into football plays to try to help him engage with the content, right? And we were able to get him so he could pass the course and keep playing. But I feel like it's taking the passion of these students, both men and women. I mean, we're seeing women's basketball take off, right? Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. Like, we have to take that energy and point it at the literacy crisis in our country and help all these educators make those connections with organizations, get the grants, get the funding. So again, we talked a lot about maybe some of the challenges out there, but as you're doing this work and you're doing the work around the top 10 by 2030, what are you most excited about that you're seeing in your community?
Well, I think that that's a great story about you using putting a playbook together to teach communication science. I love that. And I think South Carolina has risen. I think we're 41st now in the country in college and career readiness, so we're making progress. And that was during the pandemic, which I really think, we're heading in the right direction. I'm excited about, we have another program that we are launching that we have a representative in our state, Bruce Bannister, who came up with the idea. He said, Wyatt, I love the high school, the role models, you're doing a great job with that, but I need you to get your influential cats, your influential folks, and help these teachers in the elementary school. Let's get third to 6 years old to 12-year-olds. And so we have been working for the last year designing this program, working with educators such as yourself, using the MTSS models in South Carolina, working with the Department of Education to help develop 1-minute videos that will be entertaining and engaging, but help, with the behavioral, the self-awareness, and also, in addition to those 5 behavioral models that we're improving on, we are working on trying to engage these young folks in the importance of reading and math. And then, so those two are really big areas for us. And, today, I think there is a movement. Their athletes are doing better in school than they've ever done. In this name, image, and likeness, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the NIL, which there's a lot of people that don't like it, and if your program is getting all wrecked because of it, I empathize with you. And so these young folks are old enough to know that they are a brand, and their name, image, and likeness, where they're a woman there's a lot of women actually making more money in the college NIL space than there are men, and I think you're going to continue to see that trend, which is exciting. So I think using all of that energy to say, look, you can be a brand, and every day you're working on that brand. And so when you make decisions, it's either going to help you or hurt you. And if you make a bad decision, that's going to cost you. And so there's a motivation not to make a bad decision. So then it becomes, well, what are the right decisions to make? And I think a lot of young people that are struggling because of we say mentors versus tormentors. And, people say, what's a tormentor, Wyatt? Well, that's kind of just a general catch-all for poverty. There are real abusers. Sometimes probably some of you, when you're looking in the mirror in the morning, are staring at the biggest tormentor you'll ever see if you're like me, And so to teach these kids that, we're taking a stand. There's other mentors out here, teachers, your educators. These folks, they love you. They care about you. They're not here for any other reason that I've ever seen other than the fact that they love young people and they love helping make a difference in your life and helping set you up for success. And so, stand with the mentors and stand against the tormentors. And so I'm excited to see, the ability to come together with y'all. I think I've already met some new friends tonight and to get together. There's so many things out here and so many reasons and people telling us why we should be mad at each other and dividing us. I think this is something that we can agree on, that our kids deserve a chance to, succeed, and we can be a part of the solution.
Absolutely. I love that. And I think that is a perfect way to wrap up, that regardless of your politics, regardless of your teams, right? Whether you're Clemson or Florida State or Patriots or Steelers or whoever you might be, the Ravens, all right? Any other shout outs you want? Oh, okay. I was like, as long as you don't say Chiefs, we'll be okay.
You got to talk about the Gamecocks and Xavier Legette, and who won our Blanchard Rogers Award last year, and the Panthers.
Well, and I do have to give a shout out to Richard Seymour, who got inducted into the South Carolina. He was a huge Patriots player, and of course Ben Coates. So the original, even before Gronk and even before Kelsey, the original '87 Ben Coates. So, but no, in seriousness, we are all in this together. And I think this is a perfect example of where we can bring the attention that sports gets across this country, bring community leaders together with all of our amazing educators, sponsoring programs like Letters at the state level in South Carolina, North Carolina, other states. So thank you so much for the work you're doing, bringing the attention and the celebrity power for all that you do in the classrooms. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's an honor.
And thank you to our listeners who aren't in the room tonight. We're going to continue the conversations as we always do online, so you can join us on LinkedIn and continue to reach out to me and tell me what you're talking about online.